Hey everyone, welcome back, and in this video let's talk about static variables or static keyword. Now what is static keyword and why do we even need it? Now in object oriented programming there is something known as static keyword, or I can say like we have static functions, static variables for some memory management kind of a thing. So let's understand static keyword just with an example. Okay, so see what I will do here, I'll make a class. Okay, let's say I have a class person, which is absolutely fine, right? We have already done this before. And let's say this person has a age, right? Basically age, and this person has a property, say name. Okay, and we have already done this. We can create objects of this, correct? So if I say person Piyush, correct, and equals to new person, so I can create a Piyush object. And similarly, let's create one more object named as John and set it to new person, right? Now look very carefully here. If I say that, hey Piyush, your age is 22, which is absolutely fine. And I say that, hey John, that your age is, let's say, 30, correct? Now what will happen if I say that sout Piyush.age, correct? So what do you think will be the output? As expected, right, our output should be 22, which is absolutely fine. Similarly, if I say that, hey John, what's your age? Now as you can see that it's printing out 30. Now we have understood that these properties basically have their local scope. Like John has his own properties and can only modify his own properties, whereas Piyush has his own properties and can modify his own properties. Now let's say I make this integer as static. Okay, I have done nothing but I made it static. Now see what happens. I'm saying that, hey Piyush, your age is 22, which is perfectly fine. Then I say that, hey John, your age is 30. If I say that, tell me the age of Piyush, what do you think that should be the output of this program? So you will say that, okay, so you are doing it for Piyush.age, so it should be 22, right? But if I run this program, you can clearly see that I am getting 30. If I say, John, what's your age? If I say that, oh, it's again 30, what just happened here? Like, just by putting the static keyword, what happened to the Piyush's age? Or maybe I can say that, hey Piyush, do one thing. Now the age, Piyush.age equals to, let's say 100, okay? And now if I say, John, what's your age, correct? Now, as you can see, it's getting 100. So what happens is basically when you put a static keyword, this variable is no longer binded to the object. Now this particular variable is binded to this class and the value of this particular variable is shared among whole objects. Okay. So what happened when static keyword was not here. Okay. So Piyush has its own age and John has his own age, right? Like there are two different age variables, one for John and one for Piyush. But if you make any variable static, now it belongs to the class and basically there is only one age variable which can be accessed to Piyush or John. So like if I say Piyush.age 22, so there is only one variable now. Okay, they are not two separate variables. So there's one variable age and Piyush object is setting the value of that age variable to be 22. Then John basically overrides that particular variable to 30. And then again Piyush is overwriting that same variable to 100. Okay, and when John tries to print the age, so as you know that there is only one variable which is shared among the objects, so you get 100 here because Piyush has already replaced the value of age from 30 to 100. And similarly, see, when you talk about static variables, now this is not the correct approach to work with static variables, right? Don't use static variables or don't call static variables using the objects. What you can do instead is you can basically type in the class name and directly access the age variable. Okay, so I can say that, hey person, your age is 22, and similarly I can say that, okay person, tell me your age. So this is the correct way of dealing with static variables. So basic difference is when you make normal variables, basically means non-static, every object gets its own memory and its own set of variables which he can control. Okay, but if you make a variable static, basically it gets shared. Okay, now there is only one instance, like there is no copy of that particular variable and any object can modify it and any object can read it. Okay, So this was static variable. Similarly, you have static methods as well. Okay, this is not only limited to the members, basically properties. You can even have static functions. So I can say static integer get age, let's say, and I say return this dot age. Okay, this dot age. Oh no, okay. So here's an error. Can I use this with age? Obviously not, because it's static, correct? And like what I said, that this is static and this is not binded to any object, but this always refers to the object whosoever the calling is, correct? If Piyush is calling this object, then this will point towards Piyush, and if John is calling, this will point towards Piyush. But because this is static and this age variable belongs to the person, so this keyword cannot call the age. Okay, so you need to just work with age as it is. Okay, so now what I can do, I can say this hey person get age, correct? Now I can even call this function and I am getting 22 because I set it to 22. So that was static. And see one thing, what I say, if I say that hey return this dot name, okay, even this will give you an error. Why? Because you are creating a static function, and this particular function, anyone can call this function, right? This is not binded to some particular object. So you cannot work with these kind of variables which belongs to some object inside a static function. So in static function, you can only and only work with static variables. So I can just work with static variables because this particular function is static. Okay, now let's see what's the use of using static. Okay, because this was not the right example. Let's say that I don't have anything of this. Okay, I have a normal age and a normal name, correct? So see, what I want to track how many users are there on my system. Okay, so currently there are two users, one is Piyush and one is John, which is absolutely correct. And I want to track how many users are there. So how can I track? I can track basically whenever an object is created, I want to track that a user has been created, right? So see what I can do, I can have static, okay, integer count. And what I can do, I can create a constructor, because you know constructor always runs whenever an object is created. And I can say that count plus plus, okay. Count plus plus, what count will mean? Count will mean basically that plus plus basically means to increment it by 1. Now, any time that an object is being created, this constructor will run and this will basically increment the value of a static variable. And now what I can say that total persons, or I can say total users, how many total users we have, we can say that hey concatenated with person dot count. Okay, so if I run this program, see I'm getting 2. We have 2 persons. Let's create one more object. So I'll say person Jane equals new person, and if I run this program, you can see I get 3, because what's happening is when Piyush object is getting created, this particular constructor gets called, and what it does, it basically increments the count by 1. Similarly, same with John and same with Jane. So these 3 objects are basically calling their own constructor, and their constructor is incrementing the count. Okay, and because this count is static, this count is shared between Piyush, John and Jane. Okay, and then at the end what I can do, I can access the value of count using this person class, and I know that okay, so there are 3 objects that are getting created. So that was the static variable and static functions. So I hope that the concept of static is clear to you. So basically static is a memory management tool, because see, if I don't put count to be static, the count variable will be created 3 times, one for Piyush, one for John and one for Jane. But because it is static, it is only and only created once, okay, when the class is created, basically initialized, and the value of static variables are shared among all the objects. So any object can modify it and any object can read it. And that's it for this video. Let's meet you in the next video. Until then, bye bye, take care.